Andarki namaskaram. Welcome to the course on Tourism and Travel Management. I, Dr. 𝗧𝗦𝗔𝗧 𝗚𝗏𝗃 from Mahatma Gandhi University will walk you through the module 2 of this course. The module 2 of this course is on the history and evolution of tourism. పర్యాటక చరిత్ర మరియు పరిణామం. దీని గురించి మనం ఈ రోజు క్లాస్లో చర్చించబోతున్నాము. Now, how has tourism evolved? Evolved అంటే ఎలా చేంజ్ అయింది, అది ఎలా ఎగ్జిస్టెన్స్లోకి వచ్చింది, అది ఓవర్ ఎ పీరియడ్ ఆఫ్ టైం ఎలా చేంజ్ అయింది అనేది, దాని హిస్టరీ అనేది ఏంటి అనేది మనం ఈ రోజు క్లాస్లో నేర్చుకోబోతున్నాము. సో టూరిజం అనేది ఈజ్ నాట్ ఎ న్యూ కాన్సెప్ట్. ఇట్ ఈస్ నాట్ అ కాన్సెప్ట్ దట్ ఈస్ కమ్ ఇన్ మోడర్న్ టైమ్స్. ఇప్పుడు వచ్చిన కాన్సెప్ట్ అనేది కాదు. ఇట్ హ్యాస్ ఇట్స్ రూట్స్ ఇన్ ఏన్షియంట్ టైమ్స్. సో టూరిజం అనేది హ్యాస్ ఇట్స్ ఎగ్జిస్టెన్స్ అండ్ ఇట్స్ రూట్స్ ఇన్ ఏన్షియంట్ టైమ్స్. అప్పటి నుంచి టూరిజం అనేది చేంజ్ అవుతా ఈ రోజు వీ ఎక్స్పీరియన్స్ వాట్ ఈస్ కాల్డ్ అస్ మోడర్న్ టూరిజం. సో హౌ హ్యాస్ టూరిజం చేంజ్డ్ ఓవర్ దిస్ పీరియడ్ ఆఫ్ టైమ్ ఫ్రమ్ ఏన్షియంట్ టైమ్స్ టు మోడర్న్ టైమ్స్? ఈ టూరిజం అనేది, ఈ కాన్సెప్ట్ ఆఫ్ టూరిజం అనేది ఎలా చేంజ్ అయింది అనేది మనము history and evolution లో నేర్చుకోబోతున్నాము. So when you talk about the evolution of tourism, what you first need to understand is why did people basically travel? మనుషులు అనగా ఎందుకు ట్రావెల్ చేశారు? So over a period of time, if you look into what is the motivation for travel, people have usually traveled for what is known as trade purposes, religion వల్ల లేదా క్యూరియాసిటీ వల్ల. సో పీపుల్ హ్యావ్ ట్రావెల్డ్, దే హ్యావ్ అండర్టేకెన్ ట్రావెల్ either for the purpose of indulging in trade or for some religious purpose or for some curiosity sake. అంటే ఏదన్నా కొత్తది అనుభవించాలి అనే ఒక ఆశ ఉంటే దానివల్ల what is called as people have traveled across distances. So we will look into how this traveling has changed over a period of time and what is it actually today అనేది మనము ఈ హిస్టరీ అండ్ ఎవల్యూషన్లో నేర్చుకోబోతున్నాం. So when you talk about tourism అనేది, the entire tourism or the entire history of tourism, if we call it as the historical tourism cycle, historical tourism cycle అనేది has been divided into what is known as these different periods of time. It starts with what is called as ancient tourism, దాని తర్వాత medieval tourism, then we have something which is called as the Renaissance tourism, then we have industrial revolution tourism, and finally we have what is called as modern tourism. So the history of tourism has changed over these time periods significantly. It has been gradually changing, but a substantial change అనేది ఈ different time periods లో మనము నేర్చుకోబోతున్నాం. So how it has evolved over this time period అనేది we will look into it. So the entire history of tourism is divided into 5 parts. We will talk about how tourism was in the ancient times, then in the medieval times, then in the Renaissance period, and eventually we'll talk about it how it was in the modern times or how is it right now అనేది మనం డిస్కస్ చేయబోతున్నాం. So we will start off with what is called as what was the reason and how tourism was in the ancient times. So we will start with what is called as ancient tourism. Ancient tourism is also known as ప్రాచీన పర్యాటకం. ప్రాచీన పర్యాటకం అనేది ఏంటి? ఆ టైం పీరియడ్లో టూరిజం అనేది ఎలా ఉండింది, వాట్ వాజ్ ఇట్స్ ఫార్మ్ ఇన్ దట్ పర్టికులర్ టైం పీరియడ్ అనేది మనం డిస్కస్ చేయబోతున్నాం. సో టూరిజం ఈ పర్టికులర్ ఇరాలో, ఏన్షియంట్ టైమ్స్లో, ఇట్ వాజ్ మోస్ట్లీ బికాస్ ఆఫ్ ట్రేడ్ ఆర్ రిలీజియస్ పిల్గ్రిమేజెస్ అండ్ లైక్ వీ సెడ్ ట్రేడ్ పర్పస్ అన్నా లేదంటే రిలీజియన్ వల్ల మనం ట్రావెల్ అనేది వీ హ్యావ్ అండర్టేకెన్. సో టూరిజం ఇన్ దీస్ ఏన్షియంట్ టైమ్స్ వాజ్ మోస్ట్లీ బికాస్ ఆఫ్ సర్వైవల్ అని మనం చెప్పవచ్చు. సర్వైవల్ అంటే ఏంటి? యూ నీడెడ్ సర్టన్ థింగ్స్ ఆర్ యూ నీడెడ్ సర్టన్ నెసెసిటీస్ టు సర్వైవ్. ఆ నెసెసిటీస్ అనేది సేకరించడానికి మనం ఏం చేసేవాళ్ళం అంటే ట్రేడ్ చేయడానికి యూ ట్రావెల్ టు సర్టన్ ప్లేసెస్ అండ్ దట్ పర్టిక్యులర్ what is called as form of tourism existed in the ancient times, either for what is called as trade purposes or mostly religious purposes. Traveling అనేది అయ్యేది ఆ టైం పీరియడ్లో. సో if you look at the ancient civilizations, some of the most ancient civilizations, if we look into it, you have what is called as the Egyptian civilization. A civilization around Egypt is one of the most ancient civilization. Then you have what is called as Roman civilization. You also have the Greek civilization along with what is known as the Indian civilization. So these are all known as ancient civilizations. So మనం ఈ ancient civilizations అనేది కన్సిడరేషన్లోకి తీసుకుంటే డ్యూరింగ్ this particular time period, if you look into the Egyptian, what is called as civilization, most of them traveled to this phenomenal construction sites which were called as the pyramids. They still exist today, but that was actually a religious site for them, a religious place undedadi. So many Egyptians traveled from different places and came to the pyramids to pay their religious homage anamata. Similarly, Romans ane vallu enti, they have some system which is called as a Colosseum. Colosseum was an amphitheater where there was a lot of art, theater, then a lot of games which were what is being conducted. So avi witness cheyadaniki manusulu all over the Roman Empire nunchi they used to travel and come to these Colosseums to enjoy their particular time at that particular destination. So these Greeks and Romans, like I said, were one of the first people to travel, and their purpose was not only religion gaani vallu pleasure and leisure koraku kuda traveling anedi undertake cheskunnaru. So, like I said, the purpose of traveling in the ancient times, okavela manam discuss cheyalante, what are the different purposes? One is religious tourism, that is you traveled because of your religious beliefs. Ante enti, manam teertha yatralu తీసుకున్నాము. At that particular point of time, all travel was related to your religious beliefs. So in India, most of the time what happens, what kind of travel happened is, you travel to temples or you travel to shrines or you took a bath in the holy rivers. So example enti ante, many of them went to Ganga to dip themselves and cleanse themselves. And then some of the Egyptians, what they did is they went to the pyramids to pay their religious homage. And then you have the Greek people who went to what is called as Delphi to pay their religious homage. So ee time period lo most of the traveling was related to religion anamata. Then apart from religion, like I said, this is the pyramids which were a religious destination in the Egyptian civilization. Now apart from what is called as religion, there are other purposes. Now these are some of the ancient civilizations that existed where a lot of tourism was undertaken. So you have Egyptians who traveled to the pyramids, then you have Indians who traveled for what is called as gaining knowledge. This is a screenshot of the Nalanda University of what it is today. Then you have Romans who used to go to the Colosseum for their entertainment, and then you have Chinese who travel long distances for trade purposes. So వీళ్ళందరూ ఏంటి అంటే ancient civilizations lo they have undertaken tourism anamata. So the purpose, like I said, is religion. Then you have an example here of where in Greek, okay, or in Greece, the Greek are the people who actually started the Olympic Games. Now that was a sporting event where many people came to witness how this particular games were being conducted and engaged themselves in those activities. Like I said, religion kaka inko purpose enti ante ancient times lo traveling ki, that is trade and commerce. Ante vyapara vanijya paryatakam anedi చాలా మటుకు అండర్టేక్ చేసేవాళ్ళు. సో మెనీ మర్చెంట్స్ ట్రావెల్ లాంగ్ డిస్టెన్సెస్ టు ఎక్స్చేంజ్ దేర్ గూడ్స్, టు లెర్న్ అబౌట్ న్యూ కల్చర్స్. అండ్ దీంట్లో వన్ ఆఫ్ ద మోస్ట్ ఫేమస్ ట్రేడ్ రూట్, ఆ ఏన్షియంట్ టైమ్స్లో ట్రేడ్ రూట్స్ అనేది ఉండేది. ఆ వన్ ఆఫ్ ద మోస్ట్ ఫేమస్ ట్రేడ్ రూట్ ఈస్ కాల్డ్ యాజ్ ది సిల్క్ రూట్, వెర్ పీపుల్ ట్రావెల్డ్ ఫ్రమ్ చైనా టు ఆల్ ఓవర్ ద వరల్డ్ in search of business opportunities. అంటే వాళ్ళు ట్రేడ్ చేయడానికి వాళ్ళు చైనా నుంచి స్టార్ట్ చేసి all over the world they have started traveling, and this is called as the Silk Route, which was one of the first routes in the history. Now apart from trade and commerce, like I said, the other purpose that people indulge in traveling in ancient times is for leisure and curiosity. అంటే ఏంటి, ఏదన్నా వినోదం కొరకు లేదంటే ఆసక్తి కొరకు ట్రావెలింగ్ అనేది అండర్టేక్ చేసేవాళ్ళు. సో ఇన్ దిస్ particular category, those who wish to travel for leisure purposes or those who wish to travel out of curiosity, ee category lo general ga those people who were in the wealthy classes used to travel. It was not possible by everybody to travel in this particular time period. So traveling was a luxury which only the wealthy classes indulge in. So a lot of wealthy classes and royalty traveled in this time period, and their purpose was leisure, to admire the art, to admire the landscapes, even unded. So Romans were some of the people who were first in this leisure traveling. So they used to have a particular what is called as construction sites which were called as baths. So ee baths anedi entunde ante public bath unde. So when there are tourists or when there are people traveling from some other cities and they used to come to Rome, it was compulsory that they go cleanse themselves in these public bath. So వాళ్ళు అక్కడ వెళ్ళి వాళ్ళ సెల్ఫ్ని క్లెన్స్ చేసుకుంటే దే డు నాట్ క్యారీ ఎనీ అదర్ డిజీజెస్ అనేది ఓ పర్టిక్యులర్ లాజిక్ తోటి వాళ్ళు ఈ బాత్స్ అనేది కన్స్ట్రక్ట్ చేశారు. సో దే ఆర్ ద వన్స్ హూ స్టార్టెడ్ దిస్ బికాస్ దే ఆర్ ద వన్స్ హూ స్టార్టెడ్ ది amphitheater concept, and they are the ones who started the coastal resorts where people went to coastal areas to relax. So వాళ్ళు they are the pioneers in this particular kind of tourism, and they have been doing it since ancient times. So the next slide we will see an example of how a bath used to look at the ancient times. So this is particularly a construction site where there is water, and then people from other cities who travel to Rome used to go there and cleanse themselves and then go into the city and conduct their business. So this is an example of what is called as traveling for leisure purposes. Now the other purpose in ancient times is traveling for cultural and educational tourism. Like I said, India lo chaala mandi knowledge gain cheyadaniki vaalla what is called as to know and educate themselves, they travel to many universities. For instance, we have ancient universities in India. One of the most ancient universities is the Nalanda University. సో చాలామంది ఏం చేసేవాళ్ళు ఆ కల్చర్ అబ్జర్వ్ చేసుకోవడానికి, ఆ ఎడ్యుకేషన్ అనేది నేర్చుకోవడానికి దే యూస్ టు ట్రావెల్. సో దాట్ ఫాల్స్ అండర్ ద కేటగిరీ ఆఫ్ వాట్ ఈస్ కాల్డ్ అస్ సాంస్కృతిక మరియు విద్యా పర్యాటకం అని అంటాము. సో మెనీ స్టూడెంట్స్ అండ్ స్కాలర్స్ ట్రావెల్డ్ అక్రాస్ టు గెయిన్ నాలెడ్జ్. సో సమ్ ఆఫ్ ది యూనివర్సిటీస్ లైక్ ఐ సెడ్ అక్రాస్ ఇండియా, ద మోస్ట్ ఫేమస్ వన్ ఇస్ ద Nalanda University, and this is a screenshot of it in the present times. Now, apart from ancient tourism, that is the first time period, you have other 4 time periods where tourism has taken place, and we'll discuss about how it has changed. So the first time period is the ancient tourism time period. The second one is the medieval tourism time period. ఈ medieval tourism time period anaga Madhya Yuga Paryatakam, which started in the 5th century and goes on up till the 15th century. So from the 5th century to 15th century, this entire time period is called as medieval tourism. So how was tourism in the medieval time period? What kind of forms did it take? So in the medieval time period, what happens is there is a decline in pleasure travel. Pleasure travel ante enti leisure koraku manam ede travel undertake chesamo, there was a strong decline in that because there was a lot of political instability. Political instability ante kingdoms fought with each other, there were wars which were ravaged. So దాని వల్ల ఏంటి అంటే చాలా మంది ప్లెజర్ కొరకు ట్రావెలింగ్ అనేది కట్ షార్ట్ చేశారు. బట్ దెన్ రిలీజియస్ సెంటిమెంట్ వాజ్ రియలీ హై డ్యూరింగ్ దిస్ టైమ్. సో మోస్ట్ ఆఫ్ ద ట్రావెల్ పర్పసెస్ ఇన్ దిస్ పర్టికులర్ టైమ్ పీరియడ్ ఈజ్ ఫర్ రిలీజియస్ pilgrimage. So we see here holy sites like Jerusalem and Rome became prominent destinations to travel. So people would travel from across the world to Rome, or they would travel across the world to Jerusalem, and they became what is called as centers of tourism in this particular time period. Now, like I said, the medieval time period has certain characteristics. So what are those characteristics? Political instability valla leisure tourism అనేది తక్కువైంది. So the one that gained prominence is religious purposes. So this particular time period is dominated by religious and pilgrimage motives, and there is a lot of cultural exchange through trade and travel. Trade and travel అనేది కంటిన్యూ అయింది కాబట్టి there is a lot of cultural exchange that takes place during this particular period. Apart from that, what happens is travel అనేది ancient times నుంచి కొంచెం బెటర్ అయింది. They were little more better because the modes of transportation అనేది స్లైట్గా ఇంక్రీజ్ అయ్యాయి. So modes of transportation ఇంక్రీజ్ అయ్యే కొద్దీ the number of people who indulge in traveling అనేది ఇంక్రీజ్ అయ్యాయి. సో when people indulge in traveling, the numbers increase అయ్యేటప్పుడు ఆటోమేటిక్లీ ఏంటి అంటే హాస్పిటాలిటీ సిస్టమ్స్ హ్యావ్ టు కమ్ ఇన్ టు ప్లేస్. అంటే ఎక్కడ ఉంటారు ఏంటి అనేది స్టార్ట్ అయింది. దెన్ యూ హ్యావ్ వాట్ ఇస్ కాల్డ్ అస్ అట్ దిస్ పాయింట్ ఆఫ్ టైమ్ ట్రావెలింగ్ ఇస్ స్టిల్ బీయింగ్ అండర్టేకెన్ బై ద వెల్దీ క్లాసెస్. అంటే డబ్బు ఉన్న వాళ్ళే ఇంకా ఈ టైం పీరియడ్లో ట్రావెల్ అనేది అండర్టేక్ చేశారు. సో ఇన్ ఇండియా వాట్ వాజ్ ద సినేరియో ఇస్ we still were sticking on to what is called as pilgrimage because like I said, there was a lot of political instability. So pleasure traveling, leisure traveling anedi kaaledu gaani pilgrimage purposes ki there was still a lot of travel which was happening in India, and this is also known as the Vedic period according to the Indian system. Now from what is called as the period of ancient what is called as tourism period to the medieval period, we'll move on to the next period, which is known as the Renaissance tourism. Now Renaissance tourism is also known as 𝗧𝗦𝗔𝗧 𝗧𝗧 𝗧𝗦𝗔𝗧 𝗧𝗧 ante, see, when you had ancient tourism, that is when civilization started. During the medieval period, there was a lot of war, political instability. There was no chance for something to grow. It was not an environment where something could be inculcated. It was not an environment where we can encourage something. Then in Renaissance period, a lot of what is called as encouragement and focus was there on art, science, literature and exploration. So people wanted to gain knowledge. They wanted to know different forms of art. They wanted to experience how the culture is there across the world. They wanted to know how literature is changing its shape. So each time period, people were influenced to travel. So because of the rebirth of interest in art, science, literature, tourism anedi ee time period lo traveling anedi malla increase ayindi. So this particular time period is from the 14th to the 17th century. The 14th to 17th centuries are known as the Renaissance period, when a lot of importance was given to art and what is called as cultural importance, and at the same time people across traveled to study what was the art situation, what was the cultural situation, and dani నేర్చుకోవడానికి దాని గురించి knowledge పెంచుకోవడానికి they indulge in a lot of travel. So we see that the Renaissance period, what happened is from religion-centered travel, it shifted to cultural traveling, learning about culture, educating yourself. Leisure came back into the picture. So in this period, Kala, Sangeetam, Sahityanki, a lot of encouragement was received. So there was a growth in art, music and literature, and because of that, people traveled across. And this is the time period when some of the most famous works of art were what is called as created. Now you have Leonardo da Vinci, then you have Michelangelo, and you have some of the most famous structures in the world which were created in this particular Renaissance period anamata. So ee particular art ni experience cheyadaniki kuda chaala mandi travel chesevallu. This is across what is called as the European continent, what we say. And at this particular point of time in the European continent, a concept which is called as grand tour emerged. Ee grand tour anedi entante ee aristocracy, rich undevallu, royalty undevallu entante ee art ni experience cheyadaniki, ee culture experience cheyadaniki vallu em chesevallu, Italy, France ki travel chesevaru. And that entire travel route is called as the Grand Tour, which is an educational experience anamata. And this was basically done in the what is called as areas of Italy and France, which were the hubs of art and culture. So this was also the beginning of what is called as international tourism. ఎందుకంటే ఏంటి, వాళ్ళు వాళ్ళ దేశాన్ని ఇచ్చేసి ఇటలీ, ఫ్రాన్స్కి ట్రావెల్ చేసి ఆ ఆర్ట్ని ఎక్స్పీరియన్స్ చేయడానికి, ఆ కల్చర్ని ఎక్స్పీరియన్స్ చేయడానికి వాళ్ళు ట్రావెల్ చేసేవాళ్ళు. బికాస్ దే లెఫ్ట్ దేర్ కంట్రీ, దట్ ఫాల్స్ అండర్ ఇంటర్నేషనల్ టూరిజం, ఆల్సో నోన్ as అంతర్జాతీయ పర్యాటకం. Then also another important point you need to realize is, during the Renaissance period also, travel was still limited to the wealthy class. అంటే డబ్బులు ఉండే వాళ్ళే ఈ టైం పీరియడ్లో కూడా ట్రావెల్ చేసేవాళ్ళు, బికాస్ ఇట్ రిక్వైర్డ్ మనీ ఫర్ యూ టు ట్రావెల్. సో ఇట్ వాస్ స్టిల్ లిమిటెడ్ టు వాట్ ఇస్ కాల్డ్ అస్ సంపన్న వర్గాలే ఈ టైం పీరియడ్లో ట్రావెల్ చేశారు. సో హూ ఫాల్స్ ఇన్ దిస్ కేటగిరీ? ద మర్చెంట్స్, ద నోబిలిటీ, ద స్కాలర్స్, ఆల్ దోస్ హూ హ్యాడ్ మనీ కుడ్ ట్రావెల్ అరౌండ్ దిస్ టైం పీరియడ్. Now here we have a picture of how it exactly looked in the European continent during that time period. ఈ టైం పీరియడ్లో యూరోప్లో ఈ నోబిలిటీ అనేవాళ్ళు, ఈ స్కాలర్ అనేవాళ్ళు ట్రావెల్ చేసి డిస్కషన్స్ ద్వారా ఆర్ట్ని ఎక్స్పీరియన్స్ చేసేసి వాళ్ళ నాలెడ్జ్ అనేది ఇంప్రూవ్ చేసుకున్నారు. దెన్ we move on to the next most important phase in history, which is called as the Industrial Revolution. ఈ Industrial Revolution is a time period where people realize that unless and until you industrialize, you cannot move forward. Industrialization is the way forward and is the success route to growth anamata. So ఈ Industrial Revolution time period between the 18th to 19th century అనేది a lot of innovations took place. So some of the most important innovations that have taken place during this Industrial Revolution time period ఏంటంటే, ఇండస్ట్రియలైజేషన్ కాకుండా స్టీమ్ ఇంజిన్స్ అనేది డెవలప్ అయినాయి, మెషినరీ అనేది డెవలప్ అయినాయి. సో ఆల్ దీస్ ఇన్నోవేషన్స్ వాట్ హ్యాపెండ్ ఇస్ దే చేంజ్డ్ ద సొసైటీ. దే వర్ a lot of economic and social changes that the revolution brought into it. And because of that changes in society, tourism also changed. How it changed అనేది we look into it. So in the industrial revolution, what happens when industries started setting up and people started moving to industries to get employed, and when they started earning revenue and then they started earning money, and when they had money with them, it became what is called as a source for them to travel, a motivation anedi. As long as they didn't have money, they couldn't travel. But when money started pouring into their pockets, people decided to travel. So this is the time period when travel was not limited to the wealthy class. Slowly the middle class and the lower classes started traveling. Tourism anedi mass tourism ki change avadam anedi ee time period lo. So the steam engine, what did it do? It drastically changed the transportation scene anamata. Antavaraku manam edanna traditional means use chesetapaki steam engine made travel possible. Then apart from steam engines, the other most important change that we see in the tourism sector ee time period lo endante, there was a company which is called as Cooks. Today it is known as Thomas Cook Gani. వీళ్ళు ఏం చేశారంటే ఫస్ట్ ట్రావెల్ ప్యాకేజ్ డిజైన్ చేసి దే స్టార్టెడ్ ఎంకరేజింగ్ పీపుల్ టు ట్రావెల్ అనమాట. సో దిస్ ఇస్ ద చేంజెస్ దట్ హ్యాపెన్ డ్యూరింగ్ ది ఇండస్ట్రియలైజ్ what is called revolution period. Then we come to what is called as the last but one time period, which is known as the modern tourism time period. And modern tourism is from the 18th to 20th century, also known as Adhunika Paryatakam. So in this modern tourism, what happened? Air travel, railways, mass transportation, all these have come because of industrialization. With the advent of all this particular changes, like I said, tourism anedi, which was limited to the elite class or the wealthy class, moved on to the mass classes. So mass వాళ్ళకి ఏంటంటే as money started jingling in their pockets, they started moving across leisure కొరకు, business travel కొరకు, transportation means better అయినాయి కాబట్టి traveling అనేది became much more easier and more comfortable, and this is the period when tourism received a real boost అనమాట ఈ పీరియడ్లో. So with the advent of what is called as airways, and then you had what is called as cars after World War II, mass tourism became a reality. At the same time, when people were traveling, the hospitality sector also increased. So this is a picture of some of the first inns ante resorts and hotels and available undedi. These are some of the first pictures, and this particular sector also grew along with the tourism sector. So hospitality sector grew. Now what is the characteristics of modern tourism if you look into it? Like I said, elite class nunchi mass tourism anedi aindi. Organized tours came into the picture. Traveling became more comfort because of the innovations of means of transportation. Then most important thing is what? Because of airways, what happened is international travel came into the picture. So passport, visas, tourism became what is called as an industry which was able to contribute to a nation's economy. Ante adoka revenue generating industry laga potential anedi develop ayindi. So from this period of modern tourism, we come to what is called as the contemporary tourism period. This contemporary tourism period is what we talk about and we are in today, which is from the 20th century to the present times. Now this is the present tourism scenario. Now this is a scenario where you have globalization, technological integration. There's a lot of changes that have happened in the tourism sector. Now this is the area, or this is the particular period when tourism has grown to become a global industry. Today we look at tourism not only as a sector that has potential, but we look at different aspects of tourism. So there is sustainable tourism which is coming into the picture, eco-friendly tourism is coming into the picture, experiential travel ante manam oka culture ni experience cheyatamu, o particular interest ni experience cheyatamu, o particular what is called as hobby ni experience cheyatamu, ivanni are what is called as key elements of what is called as contemporary tourism. Today, you do not need a travel agent. You can do online booking. You have what is called as social media, which has revolutionized how places look like. There is so much information that is available to you today that traveling has become what is called as much more easier and an industry with great potentials over time. Now all this has been possible because of what is this phenomena which is called as globalization. So traveling has opened up for the middle class and lower classes. Globalization has made traveling across countries easier. Then you have what is called as a lot of niche tourism which is come into the picture, and the special interest tourism anedi picture loki vachai, where you have culinary tourism, adventure tourism, wildlife tourism, film tourism, wellness tourism. Ivanni kotta sectors laga open ayi, they've all what is called as helped the tourism industry to grow into what is called as a large industry with potential to generate large revenues anamata. So you talk about sustainable and responsible tourism, which is one of the main characteristics of tourism today. And we do tourism in such a way that the environment is not disturbed, the natural habitat is not disturbed. Tourism has to be taken in a responsible and sustainable manner. So these are the different phases in which tourism has what is called as changed over a period of time. The most important what is called as influence on today's tourism is the availability of digital applications, which has changed how you travel, which has changed how you make decisions regarding tourism. So ivi gaakunda you have what is called as tourism changing from being what is called as a journey to adventure to different what is called as forms it has taken in the present times. So tourism has changed to what is called as mass tourism, and it at the same time it has also become a specialized experience in the present days anamata. Now if you look at once again the history of tourism, you have tourism in the ancient times, the medieval times, the modern times, the colonial times and the modern times. So this is how tourism has evolved over a period of time. I hope you have an understanding of how it has gone over a period of time, how it has evolved over a period of time. Tourism అనేది the ancient time లో survival కొరకు మనం ఏది travel చేసామో అది present times కి it is no more survival, but it has changed its format, it has changed the motivations for travel have changed over a period of time. So over this time period, if cycle anedi manam okavela gamaniste, tourism has completely changed its purpose from what it started off for survival to what it is today. Today we travel not because we want to survive, but we travel for different motivations. Motivations anedi varied gunnai, vere reasons ki we undertake what is called as traveling today. So to just put it in a nutshell, ancient period, it was basically for pilgrimages. Yeah, the medieval period also was for what is called as pilgrimages. This is with respect to India. Then you have the colonial period where the British came into existence. This was when the hill stations were established. Then you have the modern period where Incredible India gained a lot of significance. So the Indian tourism what is called as sector also has evolved over a period of time. I hope this lesson gives you an understanding of how it has changed, and this understanding helps you to take better decisions in the tourism sector. Thank you so much for your patient hearing. I hope to see you in your next class. Once again, thank you.